RV. I have tried to present some high-level themes. Hopefully that's got you nicely worked up and hot under the collar. I am now going to take apart your video piece by piece by piece. This is going to be a long-ass video, so anybody else that's not interested in this, don't watch it. Anybody that is interested in this, please bear with me, because I think it just pulls out some points. If you thought RV's perspective had anything approaching merit, hang about here, because I'm just going to show you what bullshit it is from top to bottom. RV, I should say to you that I'm being relatively polite about this because I think you are a complete fuckwit, but I am engaging you in this particular conversation. I'm only engaging you in this particular conversation because actually people need to know that you are, the spout of the effluent pipe that pours crap into the ocean, and they need to understand what shit it is rather than assuming that it's drinking water. So, I'm not interested in you coming back to me and going, what about this, what about that, what about the other? I don't give a fuck. If you want to have those, little self-referential masturbatory exercises, you can go and do that with all your Nazi mates online and make yourself feel better about the world. That's cool. I'm not going to convince you of a thing during the course of this video, but hopefully I'll convince anybody else that may have mistaken the crap for drinking water that it is crap. Let's start from the top then. You talked about the famous picture at Bergen-Belsen, and you said, did you know that that wasn't a German driver the track? Actually, almost everybody in the whole world, other than perhaps you, knew that that wasn't a German driving the bulldozer. Most of the pictures that we have of the Holocaust as a whole were taken at the very end of the war, because guess what? They weren't allowed to take pictures inside concentration camps. So you do get some pictures, mainly associated with medical science, but very little inside the camps. Very little inside the camps mid-war. Which I would have thought you knew anyway. So, by the by. You mentioned something about the Jews being infected with typhus on purpose. I'm guessing that this is some kind of reference to another nutty conspiracy theory. If you put people in very, very unpleasant conditions and you give them unclean drinking water and you don't clear away their shit and you pile them 12 on top of each other, they are likely to develop all manner of exciting diseases. Typhus would be one of them. Show me the evidence for the Jews being exterminated by design. Okay, I'm not going to show you the evidence for the Jews being exterminated by design because there is almost no way to do that in a 10-minute YouTube video, except to say that there are some texts that you could go away and you could read. So let me give you some examples. And I'll just pick up two because they are interesting for their perspectives. One is this, which is a book by Michael Burley. It's called, and you can't see that because it's mirrored, so let me try and sort that out. Can I find the tools? Yes, I can. 1 second. Here we go, that's better. It is called The Third Reich, A New History, and it is a fascinating book, and it contains whole chapters on the mechanics of how that happened, with extensive references. Boom. If you don't like that, then perhaps you will like this. It's called The Forgotten Soldier. It's by a guy called Guy Sager. Guy was a Frenchman from the Alsace region who went and signed up for combat duties as a Wehrmacht, member of the Wehrmacht rather. He was a Lanzer, which is a bog standard grunt, like a GI in the American Army, who talks about the Eastern Front because that's where he was based. And guess what? All the atrocities that he saw down the way. It's interesting because he's completely unapologetic about his point of view. He still thinks that he was right. Those two books between them are very good places to start. If you're interested in that, show me the evidence of the Jews being exterminated by design. Those are good places to start. Michael Burley's book in particular, because in turn it has a bunch of references which you can go out and get. And I will say this generally to anybody that's interested in this subject. What you can find on the internet is okay at best. And mainly, it's bollocks. Right? The vast majority of stuff you can find on the net is utter crap. It's either badly written, or it's badly researched, or it's both, or it's just completely inaccurate, or it's made up, or it's created by Nazis like RV. Your best bet, unfortunately, is either to pay for the books or to go down to the library and take them out in very old-fashioned ways, because books themselves take a shitload of research, which in turn costs money. This stuff can't be done for free very easily unless there's a big, well-funded organisation behind it like JISM. I mean, obviously we pump out lots of stuff off the net. Anyway, so let's take the fourth point here. It's not really a point, this. You mentioned halfway through the introductory element of your video that documents are provided by the Russians, and you said you'd say more about that, and then you didn't. I assume where you were driving towards, because you're a Nazi, is that they were doctored by the communists, and then they were handed back, or they were faked, or that there's some evidence for that having happened. Something along those lines. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that there were a bunch of documents that were faked by the Russians. There were also a lot of documents that they never bothered to look at, which they just kept. Again, worth looking up Michael Burley on the internet, because actually he's quite interesting, because he talks about finding some of those documents in his book. He's finding them first hand. They couldn't have easily been doctored by the Russians on the basis that he was opening the files the first time. You can conclude what you like from that. The Russians were an important source of information. They were not the only source of information. Documents regularly turn up in Berlin even today, in attics and people's cupboards and so forth. Just because, and this goes for everything, and we covered it already, but just in case you're hard of hearing, just because you find something which doesn't appear to make much sense on the surface of it, doesn't necessarily mean you've disproved the Holocaust in its entirety. If you find something isn't quite accurate, that does not mean that the whole theory is fucked. It just means that bit might be. Possibly. Maybe. If you've examined it thoroughly, rather than jumping to conclusions at the beginning. You managed to get Rudolf Hess and Rudolf HÖßs confused. I can understand why you might do that. Hess, of course, was second in command of the Nazi Party until he weirdly parachuted himself into northern Scotland in the opening year of the war, for reasons that have never really been clear. Possibly because he found out about Hitler's beginning to plan the final solution. That is a theory which is out there. The reason you can't pronounce the Rudolf Höss's name is because his name is very Germanic. It's H umlaut O, so H O umlaut, and then it's got the funny B sign, which is an SZ. I'm reliably informed. Don't ask me how you pronounce it exactly. I don't know either. You ask about whether or not he was tortured. I'd be stunned if he wasn't, frankly. He was possibly responsible for the largest scale slaughter ever committed by one man. And if he was smacked about a bit, I can't feel anything. If it's good enough for the US government, it's good enough for us. Did it extract a precise confession? No, this man was a habitual liar. We do have, for example, his service record, which is pretty accurate. We do have documents associated with him, which are pretty accurate. I put links up to his career in the box, wherever it is, so you can have a look at it on Wiki. Our Wiki is okay on this. It does give some references. Those are worth checking. Those are actually worth reading. The problem with all of this is, and this is fundamentally an issue, people that deny the Holocaust tend to be quite thick. And in order to understand the arguments for the Holocaust, one must do a lot of reading, normally of books with very, very small print, which are very densely packed. And that's quite tough for the people that don't believe in the Holocaust in the first place, because did I mention how thick they were? Right, moving swiftly on. Differences in statistics I've covered. I'm not going to bother with it again, except to say that it's not really surprising in a war zone that you will get differences in statistics, particularly when you talk about somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 million people dying. If you kill people en masse and then you try and cover it up, and you do it inside a war zone, there's a good chance the documentation that goes with it might get lost or destroyed, or you might burn it yourself, or you might never keep it in the first place. All of which means that there is likely to be some variance in the statistics. The overlying numbers cannot be denied. Point 8. This is a general. This is the first of the major doozies that you pull up, and I'm sure that you've got others, but this one I love. First of all, you go, witnesses are unreliable. Okay, right. You pick out, I think, 2 or 3 witnesses during the course of your videos, and you say, those guys didn't know what they were talking about. First of all, half of what you brought up in terms of those guys didn't know what they were talking about turns out is a load of old balls, which we'll come to in a moment. But just because you find a witness who isn't reliable does not mean, and follow me again, does not mean that you have disproved the Holocaust. Okay, you find one witness, you have not disproved the Holocaust.